And those are the themes that I write about. The other very important thing to me in my writing is honesty. I have to be honest and I have to be authentic, because otherwise, if you're trying to be hip and cute, it's going to show. Like, this is one aged auntie who's trying to be cute with us, and they've dropped the book immediately. So that authentic voice, the authentic concern. And the last one is that you don't have to tie up every story with a pink bow and ribbon and say a happily ever after. No. But what I do is, especially when writing for young adults and teens, is to end on a note of hope. Some honesty, because I think that is very dark time. And we have to leave our readers with some, that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
That's so interesting. So you mean the open-ended kind of storytelling where the children can decide for themselves what could be the ending?
Rather than open-ended, it's more empowering. Like, all right, you can do something.
Wonderful, wonderful. Ramanjit, with performative storytelling gaining so much importance, how has storytelling and writing evolved or changed in the past few years? And what are its joys and challenges?
Oh, well, even though the children are more and more online and a lot of video games and even stories being online, I feel there's still a lot of interest in literature, though it's a reducing interest. But when we as responsible adults do events or do a constant effort or process-based work which is spread over the years, the children are guided into reading more, delving deep into it. I'll just give you an example of the academy which we run for 18 years, and as Paro mentioned that working with so many lakhs of children. So over the years, what has happened that we start with an original idea in terms of whether it's environment based or based on education. What is ailing them, or what are they thinking about? What are the teens thinking about? Is it love? Is it the new crush? Is it the education system which is bogging them down? Are these the dreams, the hope and the empowerment that Paro talked about? So we start with that idea and then to read everything around that idea. So that becomes a process-based work where they are themselves involved in reading not only books but articles, and a lot of research goes into it. And then along with the playwright and senior actors and directors, we end up writing a piece. Why I'm sharing this whole process is that if we involve them more and more in creatively, in process-based work, we are looking towards, more hope of them actually picking up books or articles or things that they can get their hands on and read. That's how I look at it.
That's wonderful. And Andaleeb, would you like to add something to this as well? We lost the connection.
About getting with you environment that we have.
Yes, Andaleeb, would you like to add something to this, to performative storytelling? To continue what Ramanjit just said.
I'm more right. Yeah. So I'm not so much of a storyteller or anything, I feel like storytelling. Yeah. So I think when I'm doing a reading, I'm more, I'm more when they're reading the book. I'm not much of a storyteller. I've seen Paro perform, and I'm sure Ramanjit also does. I think there are some people who can do both, but as a person, I feel I'm quite low energy. So I can't do that. I can't do this performative thing when it comes to that. I'm more like, just read the book and I'm sure you like it. It's the sort of thing that I can, go with. But this past year has been an interesting prospect, when we were talking about this earlier also. also getting children to read and all that, and it's definitely not been easy because there's so much burden. Children are not going out, meeting their friends. Everything is happening at home, virtually. So asking them to lose themselves in the pages of the book is also not that easy right now.
Right. So in this context, Andaleeb, this teenage is such a vulnerable age, adolescence, and they're just out of the time when we are doing the who and how junior at the primary level. The minute they come to know about, oh, this man went there, and they met the girl, and since ho. So how do you actually introduce romance to teenagers?
It's actually very interesting, that a lot of people are not comfortable with any use of romance when it comes to writing or reading books. If there are books by children, there are books for teenagers actually. They're not really comfortable with the idea of romance. I think it stems from this innate Indian need that we have, that yes, the government shelter is right, you focus on your studies right now, don't get I think that's what parents have, but it's also undeniable that it's part of life, that as each child is a unit who is experiencing a lot of different things. So in my book, for a long time, I used to feel like I was still 17 in my head, so I could kind of empathize, but now I feel like as I grow older, I don't agree with that. But I definitely think that, I feel like I observe children a lot, I observe teenagers and adolescents a lot, and I see that, these are things they're going through, undeniable, whether we like it or not. There are going to be crushes, there are going to be even more serious things happening. Writing about it makes it accessible to children. It makes it accessible. It makes it also all right for them to feel about certain things. If there are children who are confused about how they feel about a person, I'm not talking about this heterosexual relationship. I'm talking about children who are confused with sexuality. So those are the things where books can really help. Where even if they are confused about asking anyone about what's going on with me, it's books are the best way to them. So I really don't speak about it in such a big way. Usually the romance kind of appears very organically in the stories I'm writing. I don't actually intend to do something that happens. And it's enjoyable. The romance is enjoyable. Even though a lot of hardcore adventure, action lovers, I'm sure there is things of chemistry between you. It always adds to the interest level of the story.
Right. Thank you, Andaleeb. And I can see Paro all inspired by, I don't know which traffic jam this is. Yes, Paro? Yes.
Well, okay, it is the traffic jam of the gatekeepers, to put it, and I find very often that the gatekeepers, like parents, schools, etc., there's so much scrutiny by them on Indian literature for teenagers. There's so much scrutiny on the Indian one. Somehow not the same scrutiny for what's coming from the West and children are reading. That's fine. But I think exactly what Andaleeb said as a positive, and it certainly is a positive, that it kind of makes a confusing subject all right and unravels it. Is that the gatekeepers fear, that it's going to make it all right for a boy to love another boy, or for a girl to love a boy, or whatever, for that crush. And sadly and horrifically today, that some reason the gatekeepers are less fussed and anxious about incidents of violence and death in a story than they are about love and sex. And I think that's very frightening.
Very nicely said, Paro. Talking about Indian literature. Yes, Ramanjit.
So, Paro, Andaleeb, and Chitralekha, the audience, apart from the romantic love or, a boy liking a boy, there's also a question of identity, which has become a big question with teenagers because I work very closely with them. And being in performance, they tend to confess a lot. Theatre is a kind of medium where they share a lot. So they are very careful in which pronoun they want to be addressed by. Is it a she or a he or they? So a lot of teenagers have come to me that they are unable to talk to their families, that they do not feel a man or a woman, but they would like to be addressed as a person, and they are not transgenders. It's just that they refuse to identify with the social norms or the things that are connected to a specific gender, hence they prefer to be addressed as they. So I completely agree, these are all various issues that need to be addressed more and more in these kind of writings. And I would share an example that I will also share later, the Tashe Desh example. But having said that, also in that we shared the teenage crush, we shared children falling in love with each other, jealousy, and it also stemmed for the education putting so much pressure that there are more suicides and deaths. It's not the children who are refusing to address the issues. It's, as referred to by Parodi, the gatekeepers who would prefer to keep a blind eye towards it. So yes, literature and performance and arts can help all of us, just get up and think about it, that if this is affecting our teenagers, let's just look at it a little more seriously.
Actually, Ramanjit, you work so closely with teenagers. I mean, how do you normally introduce Indian literature to them?
Yeah, so I had shared this very interesting example with all my co-panelists, and we at one point of time decided that the Indian literature is not being introduced enough to our children. It's still the post-colonial effect that we are reeling against after more than reeling in after so many decades. So we decided to introduce Tashe Desh to them, and I had an exodus. Most of the children from these English medium schools, they left the course. And I said, okay, so we didn't do much that year, but we try not to leave the topic. So the next year again, with whichever children were left and more who joined us, we continued the Tashe Desh journey. But we just wrapped it up in a different wrap, and that was that the children are rehearsing Tashe Desh, and we invited Anurupa Roy, the puppeteer, to teach them puppetry, where they were showing Tashe Desh through a puppet show, and they were having these rehearsals in school. And what happens when the rehearsals happen at school, and the tuitions and the negotiations with parents, and the late evenings and studies getting affected. So there's so many issues that happen when rehearsals happen, rehearsals which are very intense. But having said that, they really intensely read and understood Tashe Desh. So it was just it was the same thing packaged differently. So whenever we want to do something like that, I mean, we shouldn't give it up, but try to find different ways and means of giving it to our children. And yes, there's a huge need, Paro, Andaleeb, and Chitralekha, that we give more and more Indian literature to them. I mean, everyone should know Paro's books and Andaleeb's books, and we should know them inside out. But we know something else, all the Western authors and everything. Our children haven't even heard of our Indian authors. So that's a huge need of art.
Actually, I'm talking about Tashe Desh, that's my favorite too. I remember doing a play with some 300 to 350 odd children, where I translated the whole thing into English, and the children just loved it. They loved the literature. It became a multilingual project, and they were introduced to so many things through the play. Right? So I'd like to ask Andaleeb here. Andaleeb, how would you compare Indian and Western literature, Andaleeb? How would you introduce that? A comparison?
That's really good to take up over here, But what I feel, I think speaking within the framework of young adult, what I feel is that young adult is a thriving publishing industry in the West. It is a huge industry, and while there might be a sort of, the way people, people might look down on it, the literary fiction or the thrillers or the commercial fiction, but YA fiction in the West has a standing of its own. So you have YA fantasy, you have YA young adult not fantasy, like you have Angie Thomas's book. Getting names, I'm very sorry. I'm very bad with names. You also have, so you have so many of these important books coming up in the West, which are quickly appraised. But in India, what happens is, like Paro said, we have gatekeepers, and by gatekeepers, we are actually people who might not encourage children into buying, reading these books. So they don't really get to know the kind of things that are available in India. So I think the biggest difference is not to, so it kind of is a circle, it goes a whole circle, So people don't read, people don't buy. So publishers are not willing to spend that much when it comes to taking a commission from adult books. And then even if they do, then they're not willing to push that much when it comes to marketing. So all this comes as a butterfly effect. The less actually young people read these young adult books, it's not going to, they're not going to be published. So that's the thing, the difference. I also feel that young adult has this sort of slightly negative connotation in people's minds, where they think it's just, teenage stories and all that. They should pick up some of the young adult books and read them and see, for the real and hard-hitting issues that they tackle. Any of Paro's books, Ramanjit Kaur's books, you should pick up Shabnam Hinwala's books, which are absolutely delightful. There will be something sort of, real issues combined with humor, combined with interesting elements. It's not all, dreary and boring. But because of this whole ecosystem, this publishing ecosystem, where because parents not buying publishing. So that's the whole phenomenon that we are in right now. So the more people turn to Indian authors, it should hopefully change. We already have a lot of things covered right now in young adult fiction. It's just that they haven't been that, people don't know about it. It's not that we haven't, we are exploring constantly, we are doing things. It's just that, because people don't know about it, so it's not reached that level yet.
Okay. But at the same time, I just wanted to just quickly add the kind of subjects that Indian authors and publishers are tackling are extremely great. There's one particular book that I co-authored with a Swedish writer. It got published by Scholastic in India. It hasn't yet been published in Sweden because they found it too experimental. Anthony Horowitz has read a few of my books and he has liked them and would recommend them, but he says it's going to be very difficult for them to be published in the UK because the subjects are so hard to deal with. I'm talking about terrorism, I'm talking about sexual assault, I'm talking about transgender and things like that. So, and he says these subjects, people in the UK are so ready. So I think also great credit to Indian authors and publishers and those schools and gatekeepers who led those books through. It's growing. I am still very optimistic.
Yes, Arjun, you have to say
No,
something?
absolutely, Paro. I agree with you, but so those are it's still more of like, the exception, I think, publishers, I'm not saying anything against publishers, I'm just saying that because of this whole thing that people are not reading, so they're not publishing, they're not buying and all that. At the same time, if you were to write something in mythology, everyone would snap it up. So I think because again, this is what is wanted, this is what parents wanted children to be. And it's that whole circle. I think Chitralekha is going to
I got your point, Lily, absolutely. But a matter of great concern, Paro, nowadays seems to be, like I'm doing so many sessions with parents or, teachers and children. The major point is, mera beta padhta hi nahi hai. She doesn't want to read books. Reading is almost becoming a dying habit. How do you make children and especially teens read, Paro?
Excellent. First of all, I don't think that reading is declining. I think the form of reading for young people especially is changing. But the key thing and the first thing when somebody says children are reading habit is dying among children. Reading habit is dying amongst adults first and foremost. If young people see their adults reading and enjoying that process, children will automatically read as well. Having maybe a family time when you just sit together and read. I grew up with that. And I hated books initially. I was not a reader. I used to resent that 1 hour when we sat as a family reading. But we had an open shelf policy in our home, which meant that we could pick up any book from anywhere. It wasn't that this is for children. And the book that hooked me onto reading and therefore led me to writing was a book for adults. It wasn't a book for children at all. So I think trust your children. Have books available. Ask them what they want to read. Take them to bookstores, let them make their own choices. Take libraries wherever there are, take them there. And most of all, listen to what they want and read yourself.
Precisely, Paro, I agree there. And Ramit, yes.
I completely agree over there, Bharati. It's a thing that I say that monkey see, monkey do. If you show it to the children, don't tell them that, pick up the class, don't tell them that, read a book, as Bharati said, but if you do it yourself, they're going to imitate you. First, it starts with imitation, because I see my 9-year-old sometimes picking up, a book which is really not meant for her or much beyond her comprehension, and I'll find it in her school bag, I'll find it everywhere, I'll find it on her table. Where's that book gone? Oh, I was trying to read it. And this is my 9-year-old. And also about this, Chitradi, as I said, that, make it into a process. As Parvati said that, in a family, make a reading into a ceremony. Even if you do it once a week, they're going to enjoy it. And if you can make it into a fun storytelling and enactment, what's happening is that, we are not investing enough time in our children. I've seen that every time I invest at least half an hour or 1 hour, which is really quality time with my child, it makes a lot of difference. And the days that when I'm unable to do it, I see the difference or the things that she's going through emotionally and how her behavior changes. So if we invest time and energy and these kind of creative activities with children, they will indulge in it and they will pick it up as a habit. And then again, of course, the whole art scenario comes in, where we make it into a process which tells them that they are becoming the creators. Their ideas are being taken into what is being written, and they decide what's going to happen in the story. And also, like last year, Ranjit Lal's Outlet Not Out, we did that as a kind of story enactment, and we hope to do yours too soon. It will be fun to do it in the next AKLF. So that get the children engaged for 2 months. I purposely decided not to do it as a complete performative piece. They held their books and they kind of sat together and did it like a reading and get involving a bit of performance in that. So there are lots of ways and means through which we can bring them closer to books. And yes, they do love books because it's stories and it interests them.
And I also think it's all about not having role models, because adults, like Paro said, that it's died amongst adults and not among children. So if children watched their parents or the people in their houses reading, probably they'd also get into the habit, and we keep blaming children and telling them that you're not reading, right? And tell me something.
It's never too early to start them reading. I have 3 5-month-old grandsons, 3 of them.
That's wonderful, huh?
We read together every day, and they love it. And the children photographs of them just loving that reading time. And we do it at performance reading or whatever, and they love it. They just, I think we grow up with the sense that it's something fun to do.
Absolutely. Andaleeb, you wanted to share something, I think?
I also want to add, something here. I think also parents need to be, like I was saying, parents also have to be reading. We can't be watching Netflix or something and expect the children to read. I also think that we've romanticized paperback and traditional reading a lot. My son doesn't mind reading from the Kindle, and I let him. I don't feel like he should, sell the paper and all that. As long as he reads it, or even listen to stories on Audible, I'm all right with it. Because I think at the end of the day, what he wants is a good story, and he's getting it, and the format is just important. So we have to be format agnostic, I think, and stop thinking about, if a book means it has to be a book like this, it has to be a paperback, it has to be in any format as long as you're reading it. And the whole stigma against comics and graphic novels, it's the act and go page, and children will find it in adult readers. So people have it feel that this is not a real book. But so as long as they keep reading whatever it is, I think eventually they will continue. So that's what I want to add.
I also feel, Chitralekha, if I may add, that we're working very close in terms of how to change different systems of education, or how we are imparting the education. Even the boards are trying to rectify, bring in arts. So if the school can become a pure joy of just reading stories, not just in terms of that if you read this story, then you have to answer these questions, and you have to answer 2 marks and 5 marks, and you have to learn it. But if it could be done independent of marks, if it could be just made into a joyous activity of reading in a group, then enacting it out, reading poems in a group, discussing. We don't ask children enough. Everything is fed to them like a spoon. That this is how it is, maths is done like this, science is done like this, dance is done like this. We don't ask them enough questions. How are you feeling? What do you think should be done? How do you feel about these issues that are going on in the society? Or what is going on in the family? Once we start doing that and related to those topics and ideas, we end up bringing those books to the table. Then I think we are somewhere making a paradigm shift over there. That then the reading part, the book reading, the storytelling part becomes an activity of discovering humanity, love, peace, understanding yourself, understanding society without many biases, and giving children a voice at a very young age. So that's how I think about it.
And I think reading for pleasure is what should be emphasized actually. It's not just reading.
Exactly.
But Ramanjit, I'm kind of envious of you because you're so, you're working with teenagers and you're doing so much of theatre.
I feel very privileged because I have my youngest student who's 5 and my oldest one is 7.
Oh, wow.
So 70. So I get the whole range of different people people from different age groups to know what's going on in their hearts.
No, but Ramanjit, my question is, how do you relate theatre and reading? I mean, I think they complement each other very well. What do you think?
Absolutely they do. And as I said, that we make it a two-way process. We start asking them what do they feel about, let's say, even a topic like Sundarbans. We did Sundarbans, Snow White and the Saline Curse. We interwove it with a fairy tale where the Snow White is thrown in Sundarbans and she's being saved by the 7 dwarfs in Sundarbans. And that's where we discuss the saline water that has come more towards our side than the other side, and Sundarbans is dying because of that. So towards the end, then what do? So you grow more mangroves, and the prince comes in and he says, I've grown so many mangroves, and we together going to save Sundarbans, and Snow White falls in love with him because of that. So also the love issue, like what do you fall in love with? It is just the face or the personality, but or are you going to fall in love with the ideas or the thinking of that person? And then again, recently we talked about the migration issue. And Bishani Chatterjee, that my colleague, she wrote not Waiting in the Wings, that was Tasha Desh. This was called When We Go Sailing. So again, a lot of issues about what do you think about freedom? What do you think of being a refugee? Like my women's production also said that you can be a refugee in your own home just because you think differently. So those kind of things have come up. So when we ask them what to write, then we write with playwrights and senior people. And then also, what do they think? For that, they have to read a lot of books. So it's a two-way process. We end up writing new stuff, and we are reading for the process. During the process, we are reading a lot of stuff that has already been written. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Great insight into the subject, Ramanjit. Any one of you could answer it. How do you, as educators, as storytellers, as teachers, how do we promote Indian literature? How to make people more aware that it is Indian literature that has to be, gaining more importance? Anybody would like to take that? Paro?
I would like to add to what Parvati said, that if these are the topics, Parvati, and there's so much appreciation that's happening abroad, I think Indian authors should become the new literary leaders for teenagers and this age group.
It's multifold, the answer to that. Having more books, having them more easily available, educating librarians on what's out there and why they need to read what those books are and then introduce them to children. Have author visits, have more innovative ways in schools. One of the things that I did in one school was to have a writer in residence in the school. It wasn't a residential school. So she would come in 3 or 4 times a week. She was writing a novel, which was a sequel to another novel. And there was one boy who confessed that he had never read a book in his life, but he read the first book to which the sequel was written, because he wanted to feature as a character in the second one. And so he got very involved, became a reader. Having innovative times in schools, like the library period is always a period where the teacher is basically telling you to be quiet. But once in a month, why not have a noisy library where there is book discussion? In the library, have, rather than everything stacked alphabetically or group-wise or age group-wise, have a shelf which is the Children's Choice Award shelf. That if the children think that, oh, this is a really great book, should be then putting on that Children's Choice. But those books fly off the shelf much faster. Those books are much more likely to be read. Once I go into the school and do a performance reading and discussion from a book, almost always the book gets read. So, well, these are just a few things. Reading of poetry, we put up in some schools something called the poetry, which is a tree. You make a tree and which has these branches, and you have to read poems, call out a favorite poem, write it down, and put it on that tree. And so they were everybody's favorite poems. Or in the monsoon, we put them up on in raindrops. So they were raindrops, and they were all monsoon poems, rain poems. And children were reading more, definitely. We had one every 2 weeks something called RIP, which is rest, read in peace instead of rest. But they could all sit and lie down on the floor, lie down on their stomachs, go out into the garden, just read.
That's wonderful. New terminology that I learned. Andaleeb, my question was, how do you handle sensitive issues for children? I mean, how do you do that? I mean, you do it beautifully, but how do you kind of sensitize the children to the issues, through your writing? Andaleeb, have we lost Andaleeb? Maybe one of you
quickly,
please
add one thing to Parodi.
Yeah.
What you said, the different ways of teaching it, but also to include it in the syllabus, I feel. More and more Indian authors, if Hindi language has all Indian authors in the book, then why not have English literature include more and more Indian authors, or at least have 50% of Western and Indian, so that we are not under post-colonial influence, today. We are, are we trying to say that Indian English literature is less than the Western English literature? No, I don't think so, and I completely do not agree, and hence, at least the Indian schools really need to introduce more and more Indian authors so that the children are, aware of it.
Actually, and there are wonderful translations nowadays, be it Premchand, Messi Sharan book, we have such wonderful translations. So I think we should kind of make it, sound that Indian literature should be introduced. Why? I have nothing against Shakespeare and all the wonderful Western literature, they're so wonderful. But I think high time that Indian literature got its due importance, right? So, Andaleeb, are you there? Yeah, I was just asking you about the sensitive issues and how do you deal with it in child literature?
I think, it's again trying to make it organic part of the story and not stitched on separately. This book, may I will cover this issue, may I will cover that issue. It can't be like that. It has to be intrinsic to the story. And also, if you deal with it in a very normal way as much as possible. When she went away, I talked about a woman who left her family and went to love with someone else. And this is not a topic that you would normally find in, books for young adults, and where her father is angry at his wife for having abandoned them. So there are questions. I think you deal the topic very organically, the most normal way, without making it. I don't know whether this will be applicable to all topics, but I think if you have concepts in those conversations can be replicated in real life also. So when I'm writing, currently this year I'm reading out a book which is a young adult novel, and it's about body shaming, and it's about a girl who's going through this period with her, a lot of self-hate towards herself because of the way she looks. And it's a much lighter book than When She Went Away. There is romance and everything, but it's also a very difficult issue, because what I might find like, so what if that girl is fat, what a big deal? But it's a huge deal for her. It's a huge deal for someone who's 16, 17 and does not look like, say, her how models look or how people look in magazines, So those are things where it all comes in observation and trying to make it as normal as possible.
Right, that's really wonderful, Andaleeb. And now, one final word that you'd like to advise children and teenagers. Just a word from Paro, something from Andaleeb and Ramanjit.
Find the book that fits you.
Okay.
And support you forever. There is that one book out there which is just you. Find it, and to find it, you've got to maybe wade through. Don't be scared, or there's no shame in putting down a book that you're not liking. Put it down, it's all right. But once you found the book that you love, you're going to love it.
Andaleeb, your advice?
No, I think I have a personal experience and not only advice, but I've been trying to get my kids to read books for a very long time. My youngest son, I finally incentivized him in terms of actually paying him money to read a book, and it worked, So I think, children have certain. I said, you can do chores in the house, you can wipe the things, but you get paid more to read a book. So obviously, it kind of, clicked and he did, and so, initially, it's just to get those books inside. And once he kind of got hooked, he kind of read the book. He wasn't really concerned about, of course, he did want the money, but he wasn't really concerned about it so much. So I think, parents have to let go of these holistic notions that, only it's a paperback or on the Kindle, and it's not really reading, it's an audio book. Those are the things that you have to let go of, and let children explore whatever they want.
Absolutely. And Ramanjit, what would you like to tell our young viewers?
I don't have any advice for teenagers. I would say that I learn so much from them every day, not only from technology, but so much that they have to say, things that I haven't thought about, or things that they think about. So let's learn together. You teach me something, I will teach you something. Let's read together, and let's find what you love to read and what we love to read, and let's look towards a better world together.
Thank you, dear panelists, for being. I'm sure our viewers, especially the children and teenagers, have been totally inspired by what you said and the words that you spoke. And to you, my dear viewers and teenagers, keep reading, read Indian literature, read, because today a leader tomorrow, and India needs leaders like you.
Yes, thank you so much, APJ. Thank you, Atrey, and thank you, Mandy.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A big thank you to our panelists. Just to let you all know, we have had more than 250 people who have tuned in for this, and they loved the conversation, so thank you so much. And we will come back in another 15 minutes for the next session, which is very close to our heart, of course, because it's the Oxford Book Store Book Cover Prize. So 15 minutes and we're back.